Welcome to APA tutorial number 10, which covers in-text citations. The purpose of citing is to indicate whose ideas and concepts you are using. You do not have to cite universal truths like the sky is blue or other very basic facts. There are two main ways you will use someone else's ideas. The first is direct quotations, which is actually using their exact words. Since those are not your own words, you must cite them. As a note, you should use direct quotations sparingly. A good guideline is no more than one direct quote per page, but even that is considered frequent. Only use a direct quotation when it is absolutely necessary. Most of what you will be doing is paraphrasing, which uses someone else's ideas but your own words. This must still be cited because the ideas are not yours. Typically, the in-text citation includes the author and publication year. It will also include the page number if there is a direct quotation, but remember to use those sparingly. There are two main purposes for in-text citations. The first is to identify a concept that is not yours. The second is to refer to the references page so readers can see exactly where the concept came from. This is why the in-text citation generally includes only the author and year, because it just needs to lead the reader to the full citation on the references page. There are two types of sources that are not listed in the references page. The first is classical works like the Bible. See section 6.18 in the APA manual to see how to cite this in text. The other type is personal communications like emails, interviews, and memos. These are only in-text citations and not included on the references page. Here is an example of a personal communication as an in-text citation. You'll notice the author, Dean Bates, is in the text of the paper, and the citation has the words personal communication in it before the date. There are two ways to cite in text depending on where the author's name is. The first way is mentioning the author in the sentence, like the personal communication example on the previous slide. As you can see in this example, authors are referred to with only their last name, and whether there is one or two, their names are written just like normal text. Immediately after their names comes the date of the resource to which you are referring in parentheses. The second way is if you do not mention the author in the text and just make a declaration based on someone else's concept. In these two examples, you'll see the declaration that groups create dependency, which are then followed by the author or authors, a comma, then the year, all in parentheses. Note that the sentence punctuation, the period, is outside the parentheses of the in-text citation. When you have more than one author, you will either use the word and or the ampersand symbol. The difference is you use the word and when you mention the authors in text and use the ampersand when the authors are in the parentheses. We will now review some common situations that require specific guidelines. These are only the most common, so be sure you see Chapter 6 in the APA manual for additional specific examples. When a source has 3 to 5 authors, you will cite all the authors the first time as described on the previous slide, then use et al. In subsequent citations. In example 1a, all 4 authors are listed in the text with the year in parentheses. 1b is an example of how all 4 authors are listed in parentheses when they are not mentioned in the text. Note that there is a comma before the ampersand symbol when there are more than 2 authors. 2a is what future citations would look like if the authors are named in the text. The first author's last name, followed by et al. And a period, and still the year in parentheses. 2b is what further in-text citations would look like with the authors not mentioned in the text. Please note 2 things. First, there is always a period after et al. Although it looks odd, there is still a period when used in parentheses before the comma before the year. Second, you can use the authors in the text or in parentheses interchangeably. In other words, you can use 1a as the first referral to an article and then use 2b, and vice versa. If you have 6 or more authors, you will always use the first author's last name and et al., including the first time you do an in-text citation for that item. Citing 2 sources within the same sentence typically happens with the authors in parentheses. If you cite the authors in text, they are formatted as usual. When they are in parentheses, you put them in the order of the references page, and they are separated by a semicolon. Other in-text citation rules apply, like et al. Just know that the sources are connected by a semicolon when they are in the same parentheses. If there are multiple studies with the same author in the parentheses, put them in order by year, separated by commas, and there is no need to repeat the author's name. If you have multiple authors with one author having multiple sources, you combine the rules. In this example, you list them in order of the references page, so Jones is first, separated with a semicolon from Smith with his years consecutively and not repeating his last name. A secondary source is one that is cited within another source. For example, if you are using an idea, then an article is cited from a secondary source. You should use the original source if at all possible. Go locate it through your library or interlibrary loan and then cite it as you would any other source. You would use a secondary source only if the original is unavailable, and even then you should probably verify that using it is okay with your professor. See section 6.17 for formatting on secondary sources. Where you put your citation within the sentence is important because it suggests what specific ideas are not your own. Incorrect positioning happens most frequently in self-reflection papers. Look at example 1. This sentence actually indicates that Smith's 1997 article supports your claim that you experienced these things, which is probably incorrect. Example 2 is a way to specify that Smith's article refers to the negative group psychology and not my experience. Example 3 is another way to move the citation to make it more accurate and not refer to my experience. Notice that these solutions, number 2 and 3, not only move the citation but also reword the sentence. Trying to solve this issue can result in some awkward sentences, so be sure to keep working with the sentences to make sure they are accurate and flow well. This concludes tutorial 10.